First, Japan turned rice into sake. Now, Japanese researchers have managed something even more surprising, making drinkable alcohol from trees. This breakthrough doesn't just create spirits with flavors that can be as unique as the forests they come from, it could also help revive Japan's struggling forestry sector, and even ease the allergy season for millions of Japanese. So, from sipping forest flavors to easing spring sneezes, this scientific innovation might rescue both Japan's forests and your sinuses, should you find yourself in Japan. So stick around to see how science turned timber into tipsy, and why that matters for Japan's future. So turning a tree into a spirit starts with a precise process that strips away what we know about traditional alcohol making. Researchers at the Forestry and Forest Products Research Institute, quite a mouthful, begin by removing the bark from the freshly harvested wood, mainly for hygiene reasons. The wood is then chipped and ground into sawdust, and from there they grind the sawdust even further into a fine cream-like paste, microscopic enough for the enzymes to unlock the sugars trapped inside. Now, this step is absolutely essential because the cell walls in wood are extremely tough. And this is why wood can last so long out in nature. And so only by breaking the particles down to this level can the next stage work. The next phase uses a specialized bead mill, where the ultra-fine wood paste is mixed with water and these heavy beads. The beads are made of zirconia-reinforced alumina and spin at high speeds, colliding with the wood particles and reducing them to sizes even smaller than the cell walls. This is the magic that makes the cellulose accessible, which is important because cellulose is the main component that will eventually become alcohol. By exposing the cellulose, the process allows enzymes to break it down into fermentable sugars, similar to how kojimol is used to convert starches in rice when making sake. After the bead milling, enzymes are added to the wood paste. These enzymes break down the cellulose into sugars. Once the sugars are unlocked, yeast is introduced to the equation, and fermentation begins. Now, during this stage, the mixture bubbles and releases subtle aromas that hint at the tree's original character. The alcohol content at this point is only about 1 to 3%, because the process uses a lot of water to help the bead milling work efficiently. This means that to create a spirit that's both drinkable and more concentrated, the alcohol is then separated using something called vacuum distillation. This method lowers the boiling point of the liquid, which helps preserve the delicate flavors that come from the wood. It also prevents unwanted chemical reactions that could affect the taste. The result is a clear spirit that captures the qualities of the original tree, all the way from flavor to aroma. But what do these spirits actually taste like? That's where things get really surprising. For example, alcohol made from white birch has a crisp, clean taste with notes of green apple or pear, supposedly. Japanese cedar, on the other hand, produces a deep, earthy flavor with a hint of cacao, supposedly. These flavors are not artificial or added after the fact, they come directly from the tree species used. And so each one is distinct and unique, and that's really cool and opens up for endless possibilities. The entire process from preparing the wood to bottling the spirit takes about 2 weeks. And throughout, researchers pay very close attention to each step to ensure safety and quality. The method is patented, and the Institute is now collaborating with private companies to see how this technology can be applied on a larger scale. According to senior researcher Yuichiro Otsuka, the main challenge is to keep the unique characteristics of each type of wood while making sure that the final product meets safety standards. Interestingly, the smell of the wood paste during fermentation doesn't disappear. In fact, the aroma gives a preview of the final spirit's flavor. Sometimes it's sweet, sometimes herbal, depends on the tree. And this focus on the individual qualities of each species is what makes the spirits so distinctive. Each bottle offers a direct connection to the forest and sometimes the specific tree that it came from. This approach is more than just a scientific experiment. It combines careful research with respect for natural resources and results in a product that is both unique and practical. Turning wood into alcohol may seem unusual, at least it's not something we've been able to do till now, but it's also a serious attempt to create something valuable from materials that are often overlooked, which we will cover a lot more later. And understanding how this process works raises a bigger question. Why focus on trees like cedar and birch and so on in the first place? And to answer that, we need to look at the history of Japan's forests and how they came to be filled with so much unused wood. So today, fast-growing cedar and cypress plantations cover around 40% of Japan's forests, a legacy of decisions made in the decades after World War II. The devastation of Japan's woodlands during the war, combined with the urgent need for reconstruction following it, left the country facing a severe shortage of timber and a barren landscape. In response, the government launched a campaign to replant forests as quickly as possible. After World War II's deforestation, the 1946 Afforestation Subsidy Program and 1950 Afforestation Measures Law fueled rapid cedar and cypress planting. These species were chosen for their adaptability, fast growth, and suitability for construction and furniture, making them an efficient way to rebuild the nation's timber reserves and revive the forestry industry. The strategy seemed straightforward. By focusing on cedar, known in Japanese as sugi, and cypress, hinoki, Japan could quickly restore its forests and secure a future supply of valuable wood. The government's support, along with new planting techniques, led to the creation of vast monoculture forests. These artificial forests replaced the diverse woodlands that once blanketed the country. At first, this approach appeared to be a success. By the mid-20th century, forest coverage had rebounded and the forestry sector was back on its feet. But, and you knew there was but coming, the uniformity of these plantations came with consequences. Monoculture forests lack undergrowth and diversity, leaving soil unstable and ecosystems weakened. Without a mix of species and ages, the trees became more vulnerable to pests, disease, and extreme weather, of which Japan has a lot. The dense planting of cedar and cypress also meant that undergrowth struggled to survive, which reduced habitat for wildlife and made the soil more prone to erosion. This is a major problem in mountain regions especially, because this leads to a problem with water retention, landslides, and declining soil health overall. The forests that were supposed to protect the land and support communities began to create new environmental risks. And this is where things took a significant turn for the worse, when the true consequences began to show themselves as the economic situation shifted in the 1960s. When Japan opened its market to cheaper imported wood, all of a sudden domestic timber could no longer compete in price, and the value of Japanese cedar and cypress dropped sharply. Forest owners found it increasingly difficult to justify the cost of maintaining their plantations, which require regular thinning and management to keep trees healthy and prevent overcrowding. As timber prices fell, more and more forests were left untended. By the 1970s, the forestry sector was in decline, with fewer workers and a shrinking incentive to manage the land. Now, this neglect is still visible today. Many cedar and cypress plantations are now overgrown and unmanaged, with trees packed together super tightly, and therefore little sunlight reaches the forest floor. The lack of thinning has made these forests even more susceptible to disease and storm damage, while also reducing their economic value. At the same time, the aging forestry workforce and limited profitability mean that large areas are likely to remain neglected unless something changes. The impact of the choices made after World War II extends beyond the forest, however. In Japan, cedar pollen allergies, known as sugi hay fever, are now affecting millions every spring. The sheer scale of cedar planting during the post-war years means that enormous amounts of pollen are released annually, creating a seasonal struggle for much of the population. For many, the arrival of spring means masks, medication, and avoiding the outdoors, which just all around sucks. And this situation is a reminder of how well-intentioned policies can have unexpected effects decades later. The initial push for rapid reforestation prioritized speed and short-term goals over long-term sustainability and diversity. While no one expected changes in the global timber market, the decline of the domestic forestry industry, and the health impacts of widespread pollen allergies, the fact remains that today, policymakers, researchers, and local communities are left to deal with the legacy of these decisions. However, the story doesn't end with the problem. The vast underused forests that once symbolized recovery now represent a challenge and, potentially, an opportunity. With so much cedar and cypress standing unused, the question becomes how to turn this surplus into something valuable. There are new ideas emerging about how these trees, long seen as a source of frustration, could actually help address the very problems they created. A neglected cedar tree might fetch only a few thousand yen, but as alcohol, it can command tens of thousands. And this dramatic jump in the value is at the heart of why wood alcohol is being seen as a potential practical solution for Japan's forestry sector. By transforming underused or oversized trees into high-value spirits, the incentive to harvest and manage forests therefore grows. Now, the problem with overgrown cedar and cypress plantations is not just their abundance, but their decreasing commercial value. Many trees have grown too large for standard lumber mills, making them difficult to process and less attractive to buyers. With wood alcohol, the economic calculation changes. When a single tree can all of a sudden yield a product worth tens of thousands or several thousands of yen, the motivation to harvest increases, and as more trees are harvested, the forests in turn become much more manageable. Now, in order to create wood alcohol, the specialized bead mills and vacuum distillers are costly, meaning private institute partnerships are crucial. The process for making wood alcohol requires advanced equipment that most distilleries do not have. Grinding wood into a fine paste, breaking it down with enzymes, and distilling it under vacuum conditions is an expensive endeavor. And because of this, the Forestry and Forest Products Research Institute, or as I like to say for short, FPRI, nailed it, focuses on developing and refining the technology, while private companies take on the challenge of the commercial production. One of these particular companies leading this effort is the Ethical Spirits & Co., known for recycling sake lees into award-winning gin. And they're now in the game backing tree spirits. And in collaboration with the Research Institute, they are building a new distillery near Tokyo, equipped with the necessary bead mills and distillation technology. The goal is to bring the first bottles of commercially produced wood alcohol to market within the next year. This marks a significant step towards tuning or turning the concept into a real industry. And the potential benefits go beyond just profits for distilleries. A potential positive side effect is that rural communities that have struggled with an aging population and economic decline could see new opportunities, harvesting neglected forests, transporting the wood, and operating distilleries all create jobs. And there's also potential for tourism as regions develop their own signature spirits based on the woods in their local area or the kinds of trees in their local spring water. For example, a village that once relied solely on timber as its industry could become known for its unique cedar-based liquor. At the same time, wood alcohol is also gaining attention in luxury markets. Its appeal lies not just in its novelty, although it is really cool, but in the connection to sustainability and the story behind each and every bottle, as we see with other types of alcohol. Now, spirits made from century-old trees or rare species can be marketed in a way similar to vintage wines or aged whiskeys, with the origins of the wood adding to their value through the story and backdrop. As Yuya Yamamoto of Ethical Spirits noted, for the alcohol industry and especially for aged spirits market, this approach opens up entirely new possibilities. Another important aspect to consider is the environmental impact. By creating a new demand for overgrown cedar, wood alcohol production encourages responsible thinning and management of forests. This, in turn, can help restore biodiversity. It can also help improve the soil stability and reduce the risk of landslides, in mountain regions particularly. And this process of removing excess trees also means that the remaining forests are healthier and more resilient to disease and extreme weather. There's also a public health angle. Cedar pollen allergies affect millions of people in Japan every spring, earning the nickname of a national disease. Each cedar tree harvested for alcohol production means less pollen in the air. While this won't outright eliminate allergies overnight, it could gradually reduce the severity of pollen seasons in the affected areas. And what makes wood alcohol especially promising is also its flexibility. It's not limited to, like, cedar. Other woods, such as cherry, for an example, can be used to create these regionally distinct spirits. Again, each with its own flavor and story behind it. And this opens up specifically for the communities of Japan and across Japan the possibilities of developing their own unique products, reconnecting people with the surroundings they live in and the local history. For example, if you were to make alcohol of a 1,000-year-old tree, or maybe not that old, but it really makes really cool possibilities. Now, of course, there are still challenges. The cost of the equipment, the need for skilled labor to operate, and the logistics of scaling up production all need to be addressed. But the combination of economic, environmental, and health benefits makes the effort worthwhile. Could these luxury tree spirits be the key to reviving Japan's hillsides? Let's explore some ripple effects. Before focusing in on how this can help the hillsides of Japan, let's take a look at how it is a problem for the people of Japan. Japan's struggle with cedar pollen allergies is not just a seasonal nuisance, it's a public health and economic challenge that touches millions by resulting in sneezing, itchy eyes, congestion, hitting as many as 70% of hay fever sufferers every spring. This national disease drags on productivity and the quality of life. Cedars alone cover nearly 18% of Japan's woodlands, unleashing billions of pollen grains each year. The sheer scale comes from the decades of post-war reforestation, which filled countrysides with fast-growing sugi, or cedar. The symptoms themselves are familiar to almost everyone in Japan. Again, runny noses, watery eyes, and sometimes headaches or fatigue. And that can make work and school more difficult. For newcomers to Japan, the odds of developing cedar pollenosis, as it is known, rise with every year spent in the country, and rates have been going up. The allergy has become so common that some see it as a rite of passage almost. And the fundamental problem is that the dense, aging cedar plantations, often left unthinned, create the perfect conditions for a maximum output of pollen. Efforts to address the issue have faced several obstacles. Logging and thinning cedar forests require significant investment, and replanting with less allergenic species adds even more costs. There's also the ecological role that these forests play in preventing erosion and maintaining water cycles, which means that large-scale removal is not really a straightforward option. The Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, and Fisheries recognizes the scale of the problem and has promoted thinning and cutting, but progress is slow, and the allergy season returns every year. So this is where, again, the idea of turning cedar into alcohol stands out as an option. By creating a high-value use for these trees, wood alcohol production introduces a practical incentive for forest owners and local governments to actively manage the overgrown plantations. This really matters because there's evidence that thinning the forests can help. So in regions where cedar thinning has already been practiced for other reasons, pollen counts have dropped and allergy symptoms have lessened for local residents. While converting forests across the country will definitely take time, the cumulative effect of more managed woodlands could be significant. The benefits also extend beyond just fewer sneezes. Thin forests allow for more sunlight to reach the ground, which encourages the growth of native undergrowth and improves soil stability. This makes forests less prone to landslides and helps retain water during heavy rains. More diverse plant life also supports more wildlife, which is often missing from these monoculture cedar forests. And in this way, managing forests for wood alcohol production supports both environmental health and public safety or public health. And this also matters because on the sheer economic side, the impact of cedar pollen allergies isn't limited to medicine and masks, but also lost workdays, reduced productivity, and the cost of healthcare. And these all add up. For local governments with limited resources, if you can transform an unmanaged cedar forest from a cost burden into a source of revenue, that opens up a whole bunch of options for you. The wood that once contributed to widespread allergies now could become a driver for better forestry practices and local investment. For individuals, the connection is simple. Fewer cedars means less pollen, and less pollen means a better quality of life every spring. While wood alcohol alone, of course, won't eliminate allergies overnight, it offers a new way to approach an old problem, one that links economic opportunity with public health and economic restoration. Now, finally, let's take a look at the final chapter of how this might help rural Japan and put it a bit in perspective. In Tokigawa, 39% of residents are over 65 years old, and the population has shrunk by about 2,000 since 2006. This town is just one example of the broader challenges facing rural Japan. An aging population, steady depopulation, and the loss of traditional industries such as forestry. As younger generations keep moving to cities for work, small towns see schools closing, businesses shuttering, and forests left unmanaged. The question many of these communities face is how to reverse this trend and create new reasons for people to stay or to return. Wood alcohol production offers a new path forward by connecting unused natural resources to emerging industries. In places where forestry once anchored the local economy, the demand for timber, especially from neglected cedar plantations, creates jobs, not just in logging, but also in transportation and processing, as outlined. The establishment of distilleries brings a fresh layer to the local economy, linking the forestry sector to a growing market of unique spirits. And this isn't just about harvesting more trees, it's about making use of what's already there in a way that adds value and purpose. So again, a practical example from Tokigawa would be where Nao Yamaguchi his family has run a sawmill for 3 generations. And as demand for traditional timber products has declined, Yamaguchi now supplies leftover wood chips to the company we introduced earlier called Ethical Spirits, a company at the forefront of wood-based alcohol. This partnership allows the sawmill to use scrap wood that would otherwise go to waste, integrating their business with a new and innovative industry. Yamaguchi hopes that this venture will energize aging and shrinking towns like this one, a sentiment that speaks to many rural communities looking for a way to sustain themselves. Now, is this magically going to solve everything? Of course not, but it could make a difference. If you imagine a visitor sipping cedar gin at a rural distillery, helping local inns and shops thrive, the novelty of wood alcohol combined with the story behind the bottles has the potential to draw tourists to places they might not otherwise visit. Distilleries can become destinations, offering tours, tastings, and a glimpse into how local forests are transformed into premium spirits. I mean, I personally honestly love to go on a tour like that. It sounds really cool. But what do you think? Anyway, this kind of tourism doesn't just benefit the distilleries, it also supports nearby restaurants, inns, and shops, providing a broader boost to the local economy. As interest in sustainable and distinctive beverages grows worldwide, Japan's alcohol really stands out. The bartender Hiroyasu Kayama, known internationally for his innovative cocktails, has teamed up with the company, Ethical Spirits, to help promote these products. By using wood-based spirits in his creations, Kayama demonstrates their versatility and helps to position them as premium offerings in both domestic and overseas markets. His involvement shows how a mix of expertise, creativity, and local resources can give these spirits a unique appeal that resonates beyond Japan. The distinct flavors of wood alcohol are another draw, with each species of tree imparting its own character. And this sense of regional identity that you can connect from that is similar to the concept of terroir in wine. Bruh, I don't speak French. I assume it's French? Anyway, this word right here, where the environment shapes the final product. For rural towns, producing spirits that reflect local forests offers a new source of pride and may even encourage younger people to stay or return home to take part in a revitalized industry. What the heck was that? Anyway, there are challenges to scaling up wood alcohol production, for sure, like mentioned earlier. Specialized equipment like bead mills and vacuum distillers require investment and expertise to handle in order to ensure quality and safety of the product. So for rural areas, this means that partnerships with research institutes and private companies are essential. Financial support from government or industry can help overcome these initial barriers, making it possible for more communities to participate in this new field. Still, the potential benefits are significant. Wood alcohol production can create jobs in forestry and distilling, support tourism, encourage the use of domestic wood over imports. It also promotes better forest management, which has environmental benefits for soil, water, and biodiversity. For communities like Tokigawa, the chance to reconnect with their forestry heritage and build a new identity around a unique product is also a powerful motivator. The collaboration between local businesses, innovators, and global experts shows how tradition and modern solutions can work together. The story of wood alcohol in rural Japan is one of adaptation and renewal. By finding new uses for old resources, these communities are showing that decline is not inevitable. Instead, they're exploring ways to thrive in the present, while also respecting the past. And this approach has already started to attract attention as it's developing. It may offer lessons in time for other regions facing similar challenges. And I mean, let's be real, most of the world is moving towards depopulation of rural areas, so whenever there's anything inspiring we can learn from, I think everyone should take note. Anyway, as we've seen, the impact of wood alcohol extends far beyond just the drink itself, which is really cool. Its story brings together ideas of innovation, tradition, local revitalization, and raises the bigger question about how communities can use what they already have to build a better future. Could this be the blueprint for sustainable innovation worldwide? I guess we'll have to see. But on another note, as mentioned earlier, for many who develop pollen allergies, wearing a mask is an essential protection, but it's only one of the many reasons why people in Japan consistently choose to wear masks. And to learn more about all of those reasons, you can check out this video next. By the way, what do you think about wood alcohol? I mean, personally, I can't wait to get to try it someday when I get the chance. But I'll see you next time.
Goblins, goblins, goblins.